couldn't have guessed. We're pretty excited about this next topic. And Argo is the third largest project in the CNCF. I was going to say most popular, but that's subjective, but also maybe the first most popular. It's a project near and dear to many of our hearts at Intuit, especially. If you didn't know, Intuit actually created the Argo project and donated it to the CNCF. And now, of course, it's maintained by so many wonderful people at CodeFresh, Octopus Deploy, and Red Hat, and Acuity, but Intuit still has a large stake in it because we run on Kubernetes and Argo. And you might not have known that QuickBooks and TurboTax and MailChimp run on these things, which is pretty cool. So we have some maintainers still at Intuit as part of the Argo project. And so we want to tell you about one of the new features in Argo 3.0 that just was released at launched at KubeCon. Wait, are our speakers here?
Yes.
I was like, where are they?
I'll bring them on the screen.
I'm sure you don't want to hear all this from me. Katie, yes, and Katie is a two-time Kube Crash presenter now. Thank you for joining us. And Michael Crenshaw, Argo maintainer. So glad you're here. And Katie and Michael are going to talk about the GitOps promotion. Promotions was the most requested feature, I believe, to add to the next release of Argo. And just over the finish line, everybody's really excited about this too. So you've got a lot of your fans that are ready here. And yay for getting promotions over the finish line. And so we're going to let you take it away.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Flynn says we should talk more about it. People on the street keep telling me to be quiet about open source work.
So let me go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Or Michael, can you see my screen?
I see it.
Perfect. So my name is Katie Lamkin-Fulsher, and I am a staff product manager of platform and open source at Intuit.
And I'm Michael Crenshaw, a staff software engineer on our Argo CD and rollouts team, and I'm also a lead maintainer for Argo CD.
And we are going to talk about Argo promotions today. This is something that's definitely near and dear to our hearts. It's things that we've experienced directly, pain points at Intuit, and we've heard from the community, and we want to make sure that we're working with them to solve these problems. So jumping in, let's quickly run through our agenda today. We're going to run through the Intuit developer platform, give you some insights on what things look like today running internally at Intuit. We'll talk about the evolution of GitOps, where we ended up today, how this played into solving some of our problems that we previously experienced and our current problems that we have today, how we're addressing those problems that we're experiencing today, give you folks a quick demo, and then talk about the takeaways. So just to touch on Intuit, as Lisa mentioned, Intuit is a financial technology company, focusing on helping individuals and small businesses with finances, right? So big brand names of TurboTax, Credit Karma, QuickBooks, MailChimp. We have a ton of end users with those businesses. Those are big brand names in financial technology. And so as you can see, based off the numbers on the screen, we need to make sure that not only that our end app developers are delivering a positive experience for those users, but us as a developer platform team, that we are delivering a positive end experience for our app developers so that they can deliver those experiences to our customers. Now, what does this look like from an Argo CD platform perspective, right? So we have a huge footprint on Kubernetes, and we manage 50 plus Argo CD instances. But not only is the footprint big on Kubernetes, and we need to make sure that we manage that scale, but we need to make sure that we scale to the level our developers are currently being productive at. So today you can see that we have over 2.4 thousand PRs opened per day, and we have goals to double that. And so being able to keep up with that load with our developers and having them be able to have that productivity, but also have a good experience developing and delivering with our Argo CD platform at Intuit is extremely important when delivering those experiences.
And with 2.4 thousand PRs a day happening, as you can imagine, environment promotions is a huge part of what we have to solve at Intuit. And I think of environment promotions as kind of being the GitOps final boss. So we're going to talk about how we think we can defeat the final boss. But in order to understand how we arrived at the solution that is GitOps Promoter and Argo Promotions, we have to understand the evolution of GitOps up until today. So back in the ancient days of GitOps, things were very, very simple. You had a Git branch, usually your default branch with some manifests in it. So typically stuff like customized and Helm manifests, which I'm going to refer to as dry manifests. So don't repeat yourself tools. You would open a PR, you'd merge it, and then Argo CD would hydrate or render those manifests for you on the fly and apply those to your Kubernetes cluster. So auto sync turned on, things just happen for you. Very simple structure. We basically immediately realized that we needed to add a step to this because we needed a human in the loop. So everyone went and they turned off auto sync on all their Argo CD applications, and they would have a human go and manually hit the sync button for two reasons. First is that they wanted to have a human in the loop to see the final rendered manifests before applying them. So if you've ever bumped a Helm dependency version, you know that it's a bit of a roll of the dice. It can change a bunch of stuff about your manifests, and if you don't see it before you apply it, you could be in for some nasty surprises. So turning off autosync gave users the opportunity to see the manifests in the Argo CD UI. The second reason we would do this is for manually gating promotions. A user would sync an app, go do some tests, make sure the app is healthy, sync the next app, and so on and so forth. So that's how they'd manually promote. But that's very tedious. So the next stage of evolution was to replace that human interaction with a promotion pipeline. And at Intuit, we did that using Jenkins. People use GitHub Actions, Argo workflows. But basically, it is you have something that runs Argo CD app sync and then Argo CD app wait and see if it becomes healthy. And potentially you have some other tests in between as well. You do lose the sort of human insight, though, into what those manifests looked like when they changed. So the next stage of evolution was the rendered manifest pattern. And the way this worked was you would commit your dry manifest to your main branch. Some pipeline would render those manifests using customized build, Helm template, etc., and then push those manifests to a hydrated branch, which then Argo CD would pick up, and your promotion pipeline would apply to the clusters. So now we're in a situation where we have two pipelines, and this is where where Intuit is today. We have Jenkins doing both of these steps. And it works. It gets our environment promotions done and gives us the full rendered history of an application. But there's still some downsides, which we'll talk about.
So let's talk about some of the challenges that unfortunately we're facing today. So the first one that I'm going to touch on is lack of centralized visibility. As Michael explained, kind of when walking step by step through this process, you start in Jenkins. You want to understand how your manifests are going to be rendered. Maybe those hydrated manifests get written out to Git. You need to check the status of those in Git. Then ultimately, those Jenkins pipelines are going to be the ones that call the Argo CD CLI to sync the applications in Argo CD. You could end up in a situation where a failure takes place in Jenkins or a failure takes place within Argo CD. And you need to be able to traverse across all of these tools in order to gain an understanding of what's happening within those environments. There isn't necessarily a single place where you can look to understand the health of your environments, the health of your promotions, and what those changes look like that were being deployed. The second pain point I'm going to touch on is complexity of those custom promotion scripts. The logic that I was referring to that takes place in those Jenkins scripts is all custom, right? Jenkins is an imperative pipeline, meaning I can go in there and write whatever groovy, whatever bash I want to execute in that pipeline. And it's very flexible and very powerful. But when you're looking to scale that at an enterprise level across thousands of services with thousands of promotions pipelines, managing that is very complex. Let's say the platform wants to update its best practices when it comes to deploying across different environments. Maybe we're removing environments, maybe we're adding environments. Making these changes at scale in order to keep everyone up to date with our best practices is unfortunately almost nearly impossible when you're working with these custom scripts and need to vend out changes to these thousands of pipelines. One of the things that could be changed across those promotion scripts is quality gates. The more we release, the more we want to have, these wonderful features go out into production quickly, the more important quality gates are into assuring that whatever we put into production is the highest quality code and highest quality release we can put out there. Now, with the custom promotion scripts also unfortunately comes with custom quality gates, and ensuring that we have good high quality gates that are benefiting users and not hindering them or slowing down their release process and being able to manage those at scale is also very complex. And unfortunately, it can lead users to just turning them off because they're not actually benefiting them, and then inputting other manual processes that have to take place in order for a user to verify that the deployments that are taking place throughout their environments are actually of high quality and didn't introduce issues throughout them as well. And finally, the last problem point I'm going to touch on is a poor rollback capability. So within this process I just touched on, there's a few different ways that you can perform a rollback. One is you can go into the Argo CD UI, and Argo CD provides a really powerful rollback feature where you can select history and rollback, select the version of the application that once existed onto that environment, and then Argo CD will roll back to that version of the application. Now, that works great when you want something super quick, but then unfortunately, your application goes out of sync because the state of the cluster is no longer aligned with your source of truth in Git, right? So if someone were to accidentally try to push something out the door, right behind you, and it's a new version that unfortunately contained those changes that you just rolled back in that environment, those can get overwritten and another incident could take place, which is not what we want. So that puts us in a little bit of a dangerous situation and involves more manual management and collaboration with your teams to prevent those issues from happening. The other ways you can perform rollbacks are either making a change, opening a PR, making a change to your dry manifest, shipping out a new image. That has to go through your entire promotion pipeline, which is a very lengthy process, ultimately increasing your time to recover, which is not ideal either. And then a final way that you can perform a rollback is directly going into those rendered or hydrated manifests and making the changes directly there. But then unfortunately, like the change you made in Argo CD, that change also is not made on your dry manifest branches. So when the dry manifest branches, goes through a promotion process again, those get rendered out and override the rendered manifest that you currently edited. You can end up in that same situation where the image that you didn't want to go out could go out back into production again. And so let's jump into the current GitOps flow and visualize exactly where these pain points exist today that we're experiencing at Intuit. So promoting the change. As Michael said, we're using Jenkins. So this is what a subset of our CI/CD pipeline looks like today. Here's a successful CI/CD pipeline, right? We've built it, we publish it, we deployed to dev, and dev has a green check mark. So I can say, hey, great, dev is healthy. But unfortunately, this only represents the actual pipeline execution. So this means that the actual code and steps that took place within this pipeline at that stage executed successfully, which is great. But it doesn't mean that right now my dev environment is healthy because things could have changed that affected the health of that environment, right? And so there's a little bit of a disconnect of what this green check mark means and how it actually reflects the health status of my promotion in that environment. There's also diagnosing problems. So let's say instead that failed, right? Here's a screenshot of, oh no, my deployed failed. I see that red X. I know exactly that it failed the deploy, but I don't know why it failed the deploy. I don't know where it failed the deploy. Was it something that was in my Jenkins scripts that caused it to fail? And maybe it didn't even make the call to Argo CD. Was it the call to Argo CD that failed and something went wrong with my application there? In order to figure that out, I unfortunately need to go through thousands of lines of logs that the build stage produces at that point in order to understand exactly what happened, right? And debugging this can be, very, very tedious, as those, thousands of lines usually are. But also at a platform level, when the platform team is, managing best practice and making recommendations for development teams, it may be that some of the context of these builds and deploys that are running, developers may not have every single piece of expertise in order to troubleshoot or understand every single line of log in this file. And that could be extremely daunting as well.
So yeah, promotions through pipelines have their problems, and now it's time to defeat GitOps's final boss, and we think we've done that with Argo promotions. So let's look at where we're at now. We've got a couple different pipelines, both for us running in Jenkins, for other folks, different technologies. Let's make one small tweak to this picture and take one step towards simplifying things. We can replace the first pipeline with a new Argo CD feature called Source Hydrator. It's in an alpha state, but you can use it today. And its whole function is to replace that pipeline. Instead of having a Jenkins pipeline that pushes to a hydrated branch, Argo CD says, okay, I see where your drive manifests are, I'll render them for you. And instead of syncing them immediately, I'll just push them to a branch, and then that becomes our sync source. The next step that we can take is telling that hydrator to render to multiple branches, so one for each environment. That lets us get one step closer towards the key piece that lets us enable fully GitOps promotion. So the next step we'll take is a big one. And I'll point out before we take that step that what you're looking at is not branch-based environments, which you've probably heard is an anti-pattern in GitOps. We're not saying that the user needs to manage their manifests in different branches for each environment. We still have one place for the user to interact, and that's the main branch. We just have branches where they can read manifests per environment. So it doesn't hit the same problems that the anti-pattern does. So fear not, this is not that. This is much, much better than that. So next step we take is to add a branch for each environment so that we have a pair of branches. And this provides the gap that we are going to bridge in order to enact promotions. So the hydrator pushes to 3 branches, which I'll call the proposed branches: dev next, stage next, prod next. And then our active branches are dev, stage, prod. Whenever the hydrator pushes newly committed manifests to the proposed branches, there is a tool that can open pull requests automatically for each of those environments. And the tool's called GitOps Promoter. It exists today. There are releases out, and it lives in Argo Labs. So Argo Labs GitOps Promoter will open those pull requests, and then you have a couple of options. Either we can go way back into GitOps history, and the user can manually hit merge on those to promote environments, and they can read the diff and the PR and understand what they're merging. Or we can automate the process of merging those pull requests. And that's also built into GitOps Promoter. Today, we have the ability to say, if your previous Argo CD apps haven't become healthy, we don't promote. After those PRs get merged, Argo CD auto syncs them to the cluster. So this is how we get to a world where Argo CD autosync can be turned on again. We can get back to true GitOps. So that's kind of the structure of how the thing functions. The next thing I want to show you is what you actually have to write. When people write pipeline-based environment promotion, they end up with thousands and thousands of lines of GitHub Actions or Argo workflows or Jenkins. This is all you need to have a 3-environment promotion setup. So you have a list of environments, and that's the order that they'll be promoted in. And each of those refers to the active branch where the manifests are actually being synced from. And GitOps Promoter is smart enough to know that there are branches for the proposed changes for each of those. Then we have one active commit status called Argo CD Health. And this is the only one that's built into GitOps Promoter today. It's something that will monitor all the Argo CD apps that are syncing from that branch, and it'll gate the next promotion based on whether they're healthy. Over time, we'll add support for additional checks, though, and of course, you can always define your own checks. So that's how you set things up. I want to show you what we eventually want to get at for an experience for this, which is a really solid UI extension in Argo CD. This is just a mock-up. It doesn't exist today, but you get the basic idea. We'll have something that represents each environment. You'll be able to see what commit it's running, whether it's healthy. And then the little bit at the bottom that's moving is representing a new change that is being merged progressively through the different environments. So it gets merged in E to E, and then it's only targeting prod. And then we're waiting on E to E to become healthy to merge the next environment. So that's the far, far future state. Once we finally get a UI set up, it'll be beautiful, it'll be amazing. But I want to take you through the experience that doesn't require that UI. One of the main core things we wanted this tool to be able to do was enable a promotion experience through the SCM UI that you're already used to, GitHub, GitLab, etc. So that's what this demo will do. So quickly to set it up, on the right side, we've got apps for dev, stage, and prod, a couple of different ones for stage and prod. On the left side, I'm going through making a change to the manifests that actually affects all applications. So I'm going to change the image tag and change a common annotation that will affect all the environments. So I only have to make one change. On the right side, immediately, once I've done the commit, Argo CD is hydrating that change, which means it's going to push it to what I'm going to show you on the left side, which is the development next branch. So I do a quick refresh on the left side, and you see, yep, new commit, and it has a little bit of metadata, but the important part is manifest.yaml, which is the rendered changes that are actually proposed to be applied to the development environment. I'll check that GitOps Promoter has automatically opened my promotion PRs for me and see that the contents are exactly what I expected. And now I'll manually merge this. We set manual merge here to give us the opportunity to see things functioning, but from this point on, the entire promotion process is automated. On the right side, you'll see that this application goes out of sync, and then immediately, since auto sync is turned on, the changes get applied. And then we're in the stage where we are evaluating the commit status or the health check for the next environment. So left side, I'm showing you the PR that would promote this change to stage, and it's blocking waiting on the development environment to become synced and healthy. On the right side, you see it just became healthy because the rollout finished. And within a few moments, the left side will show we're healthy now and the PR can be merged. Everything here is working on a timer, so it's slightly delayed. With webhooks, this would be basically immediate. So I didn't touch anything on GitHub. It just went healthy and synced. So now we're off to the races on the staging environment. Right side, you see it became out of sync. It synced immediately. Now it's progressing. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to run through a rollout. Once that becomes healthy, the left side will become healthy and it'll merge. I'll point out, you can use our Kubernetes API to manage these commit statuses to gate promotions. You could also just use a GitHub action that like watches for pull request events and runs some tests. GitOps Promoter isn't special. It has to respect whatever branch protection rules you set up. So if you say this check is required, we don't promote until all the checks which are required passed. So now it smashes merge for you, and I'll go take a peek at the production application, and it's noticed that there's a change, it syncs it, and that is being applied. So that's the whole experience from the SCM perspective. Again, we're really looking forward to having a UI that wraps all that up for you, but this is the base experience. So what's next for the project? Obviously, Argo CD UI extension is top of the list. We also want to support additional SCMs. So today we support GitHub and GitLab. We'll be adding more for those over time. There are issues on the repo requesting support for additional SCMs. So go add a request for your favorite tool. And then finally, we're going to add additional commit status managers besides just Argo CD Health, so that you have a full suite of gates. And of course, it's possible to write your own and gate on whatever piece of information is important to you.
Awesome. That was huge. That experience just sounds so much better than all the pain points that I called out previously with our imperative pipelines that we have today. The key takeaways that I want everyone to walk away with today is all of our apps were in sync. That gets us out of a lot of trouble that we can have with, our releases tromping over each other, rollbacks tromping over each other, and having that experience that provides consistency across the board. It was completely auditable. So every single action and event that took place, we can trace it back to all the events that we gathered in Git. It was completely visible, and we don't even have our super cool UI on top of it yet. So that makes this extremely powerful and an extremely native way that developers are used to working with in their day-to-day lives. It was completely declarative in a very concise way that makes it very easy to manageable and scale at a platform level, and it was reliable and robust. Now, this was fun. If you guys want to stay in the loop with everything Intuit is doing with open source, I did see in the chat earlier that someone wanted to hear more about Intuit open source. Please follow Intuit OSS. We do a lot of really fun and big things, not only with Argo, but with other open source projects in the community. And so we'd love for everyone to stay up to date with us, give us feedback, and work with us in the community to make things better for everybody. Thank you.